Hello, welcome to the Forge Your Trail podcast. I'm Frank Rodriguez, your host. Today we have as our guest Mr. Jason Bligen. Jason is a facilitator for our On My Shoulders class, parenting class. And Jason, tell us what else you do for the University of Oklahoma.
Well, Frank, thanks for having me here today. I am a supervisor for the Energy Assistance Program, one of the contracts for CPM. And what we do is we help people as far as trying to get their energy assistance or their utility bills paid. We call it the LIHEAP program, which is Low Income Heating Energy Assistance Program. And we do that at least 2 times a year. We do a summer program, which we're in the middle of right now. We do a winter program, which usually is around December or January. And then in the springtime, around March or April, we do one called ECAP, which is called Energy Crisis Assistance Program. And both programs pretty much work the same way. You have to submit an application. We take a look at your income, and we take a look at how many people are in the home. We go by what we call the one chimney rule, meaning how many people are living in the home or utilizing that utility. And so I'm a supervisor for that program, and I've been doing that off and on since 2018, but strictly for the past since 2022. That's been my main focus.
I see.
So, yeah.
So I've never known this. How many people do you actually have to supervise?
Well, my particular team is considered what we call the back office team, and I have 7 to 8 people that that report to me directly. I have one called a gatekeeper, which is my lead, and she's amazing and awesome. She handles a lot of the day-to-day tasks and making sure that everybody stays on point and has all their specific tasks. And then I have 7 other team members that work with me, and we do a variety of things where the main thing that we handle is intake of any client correspondence that comes in pertaining to like their utility bill, pertaining to updating information, and making sure that we load that information to our system of record. We also, when the agents need to send out, who process the cases, need to send out correspondence to the clients, we're the ones that are responsible for making sure that it gets printed and gets sent out. And then we do a variety of things that is required of us. I like to say that our job is to help the people who are helping the people of the state of Oklahoma get energy assistance.
I see. Yeah. So how many people do you impact with that program?
The entire state. So I would probably say just ballpark figure, I think we did about, for summer LIHEAP, I think the first day we did maybe around 13,000 applications.
That
was just on that first day alone, and we're still in the process. And that was just on the first day that we received. And so, and we were open for a very short time, but, we helped a lot of people, and we're still in the process of that. And so, between winter LIHEAP, summer LIHEAP, and ECAP, and then we also have a program that we call Life Threatening that runs year round, where a client has some sort of medical emergency, or let's say they need a medical condition that is potentially life threatening, where they need some sort of medical assistance, and they can't live without electricity or heating in the winter. Our program helps with that as well.
So I just want to make sure our viewers and listeners understand what you're doing is helping people pay for their electric bills,
yes,
and keep their heating bills to keep them warm and safe throughout the winter.
Yeah, LIHEAP and winter LIHEAP handle those 2 programs. ECAP actually handles clients is specifically for clients who have like a specific cutoff. For winter and summer LIHEAP, you don't have to have a cutoff notice for us to try to help you. You just need to send in your energy bill, and if you fit the criteria, or we have to review your case, we'll send something to your energy provider, letting them know that you were eligible and that you've been approved for winter or summer LIHEAP. We try to help as many people as we can, but sometimes income comes into a factor, and some people may be a little bit over income, or sometimes people just don't respond to the correspondence that we send out. And so we do the best that we can to try to get in contact and try to help everybody as best as we can, but sometimes we just can't.
Well, that's just one of the amazing programs that the Center for Public Management at the University of Oklahoma.
Yes, it is, and there's a lot.
Right.
And there's a lot of programs that the Center for Public Management does, and especially partnering with the state of Oklahoma that a lot of people just aren't aware that we do. Everybody thinks, well, OU is just about football and gymnastics and softball, but there's a lot more that the University of Oklahoma does to help the people in the state of Oklahoma, not just on Saturdays for 12 weeks out of the year.
So that's Mr. Bligen. Now let's talk about Jason.
Oh, okay.
And Jason, I thought maybe we'd talk about 2 or 3 things.
Sure.
First, I know that you're a big football fan, so we'll cover some football talk.
Boomer Sooner.
Boomer Sooner. Okay. I know that you're a big superhero fan, so we're going to talk a little bit about superheroes. And then lastly, I know that you like to do some karaoke.
Yes.
So maybe we'll talk about that for the end of it. Jason, first of all, you grew up in where?
The Bronx, New York City.
Right. So that's quite a ways from Oklahoma.
Yes.
How does a Bronx kid become a diehard University of Oklahoma football fan?
I get that question all the time, and you'd be surprised. There's a lot of connections between Oklahoma and New York City. Obviously, Mickey Mantle, who is played for the Yankees, is from Oklahoma, and,
right.
and so there's that connection. There's a lot of other players, who played for the Giants, who played for the Knicks. John Starks was a point guard for the New York Knicks. He went to that school up in Stillwater, Oklahoma State. There's a lot of and we had Teresa Witherspoon, who played for the New York Liberty. She played also she played here in Oklahoma. So there's a lot of sports and connections to people from New York City and Oklahoma. My best friend, who grew up in Newcastle, Oklahoma, her family, her and I met when we used to work for F.A.O. Schwartz, if you're familiar with the movie Big, where Tom Hanks is on the big piano. We both used to work for that store, and that's how we met. And so one day she said, do you watch football? And I said, I watch the Giants, okay. And she says, well, what about college? I said, if Grambling is playing, I'll watch Grambling. So well, you should be a Sooner fan. What is a Sooner, and why do I want to be one? And so we went to watch the Sooners play one day, and I kind of fell in love with them. And I was like, I got a T-shirt, and what I used to say was I was a T-shirt Sooners fan, meaning I got a T-shirt and I would cheer for them. Did the Sooners win? Yay. Did they lose? Oh, that sucks. And I just keep on going about my day. And then in 2000, we were all turning 30 at the same time, and she had this genius idea and said, hey, I want all my New York friends to come to Oklahoma. And I said, on purpose? Why do you want me to come? Okay, I wear the shirt. I cheer for the team. Do you want me to come on purpose? She's like, yes. So her parents loved them to death. They worked on me for a year to get me to come. And finally, we flew out in July, and I tell people this all the time. I said, imagine yourself being a New York Yankees fan or being a Giants fan, and you're from the Midwest or you don't live in that area. And then you come to New York and you see how people are invested in the Yankees or invested in your particular team.
Right.
For me, as a guy who didn't go to a big college and didn't go to a big college football school, and you'd be surprised, college football is very big up there in New York City. Trust me, on Saturday the bars are filled with college football fans. For me, I didn't understand it, and so when I came out here, and I saw all these people dressed in OU gear, and they took me on a tour of the campus, and I went to Campus Corner, and this was 2000, so this was the first year after Bob Stoops had become the coach. They hadn't even won the national championship yet. So I just was enamored, and that's how I felt. I just fell in love with it. And so every year I would come out with an empty bag, and I would go to Campus Corner, and I'd go to the bookstore, and I'd load up on all my OU gear, and I'd come back home, and and I'd be, as I like to say, New York's loudest and proudest OU fan, and everyone would just find it amazing. I'm like, and fans, they wore North Carolina, they wore Georgetown, and they wore all these other schools, and here I am wearing Oklahoma stuff, and I go, have you ever been on the campus of North Carolina? Have you been to Georgetown campuses? No. Well, I have. I've been to Oklahoma. I know what it's like. I've been on the campus. I've experienced it. So I tell a lot of people living here now, they're like, well, why did you move to Oklahoma at one point? And I said, well, I came for the football, but I stayed for the people, because the people of Oklahoma, even when we came out here that year, I met so many people that, she knew and that her parents introduced me to. I just fell in love with it, and the people just so welcoming. They made fun of me for not being able to drive at my age because I was 30 years old. I didn't know how to drive. But again, I said,
I didn't know that about you.
Yeah, and she said, and her mom says, well, he doesn't need to learn how to drive. He's got 24-hour transit system in New York City. What does he need to learn how to drive for? But and I, and prior to moving here, my driving knowledge was basically pole position or Grand Theft Auto, playing the video game. And so my wife was like, yeah, no, that's not going to work. So we're going to have to get you some driving lessons and stuff. But I've been driving since 2014, and I love it and stuff.
So you had to go do the driving test?
I did the driving test. I'm actually very good at parallel parking, and if anybody has ever been to campus while school is in session, especially in front of Memorial Stadium, you understand that there's that section when it's crowded and you have to parallel park in there, and I get it on the first try with no problem, and so I'm very proud of myself.
So, Jason, I think that you're an interesting case of how people can sometimes manifest what they wish for. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to explain that. You spent some time actually working in the University of Oklahoma bookstore and fan shop. Mm-hmm. And you got sort of a behind-the-scenes look.
Yep, I got to peek behind the curtain, and it was. I remember the first time I came when it was just the bookstore, before they transformed into what is now known as the Fanatic store. I remember being in there, and I was in the process. And one of the other reasons, let me give you a little background on that. One of the reasons why I moved to Oklahoma is I was working for another company down in Texas at the time. I'd moved to Texas. We'd left New York City in 2013, moved to Louisville, Texas. We were living out there, and I was working for this company. And then I was doing mortgage assistance, helping people again try to keep their homes. Mm-hmm. And at one point I just said, I want to go back to school. I want to do these things. I want to get my own degree from my own surface and do it on my own terms. And so my wife said to me, you can do a lot of this online, but there's only one place that I think that you need to be. You need to be in Oklahoma, and you need to be at the University of Oklahoma. You need to be getting your degree. And so February of that year, I think it was 2017, we came up, did a visit, looked at houses, hung out with our family that lives here, and then by May, we had moved in. And so I had to, obviously I was thinking, okay, great, I'm going to start going to class and everything, but being out of state, you have to wait a certain time be.
Otherwise, it's going to
cost a little bit more. Yeah. So I was working for this other company, and then I needed some part-time. I wanted to do something a little bit more part-time hours. And so the bookstore was hiring. So I went in there, and, I remember because my friend Patrick, who we still talk to this day, who also now works for OU, I introduced myself to him, and he was just like, well, here you go, fill out this application. And I did it, and I got the job. And then it was just so much fun, seeing the fans come in, helping kids come in, find their books and everything. And as a person who was going back to school, I wanted to be around all of that. So walking through the stacks and seeing the books and seeing all that stuff, it was just great. And so finally, at one point, I think it was late in the day, I realized I was in the store by myself with all this merchandise, and I said, oh my God. I said, this is amazing. I said, I have all this OU stuff at my own disposal. I can touch it. I can feel it. I don't have to worry about, oh man, how long until I get to see it. And then people would come in like on game days, because we used to hang out with a lot of the OU fans in New York, and they would come back to Oklahoma for a game, and they would walk in and they would go, we're not surprised that you're here. You're getting paid to yell Boomer Sooner and it's, you're living your dream job. And I said, yeah, I really am. And we would all laugh about it. And so when people heard that, we had moved to Texas, and when we were moving to Oklahoma online, they were like, we're not surprised. We knew it was going to happen at some point. We knew you were going to get to Oklahoma, and here you are. And so yeah, that's, and it's fun. It really is a lot of fun, peeking behind the curtain, seeing how we prepare for it, how we get merchandising out. We had to do we had stands in the stadium that we had to prepare. And, when I was in New York, before I went to work I used to work for Madison Square Garden, so I knew a lot about merchandising. So the manager at the time, she goes, oh, I need you on my team. And so I was running up the stairs and getting stuff and just making sure things were done, as best as we can. So. It's fun.
That's awesome. So peeking behind the curtain, a lot of times when people see behind the curtain, they become a little bit disillusioned. Seems like you got even more excited.
I did. You know, it's hard work, and you know, what a lot of people don't understand is, you know, there's a lot of good people that are behind the scenes that make a lot of this stuff happen. You know, the merchandising aspect. You know, you people get to see what the football team does on the field. They don't get to see the practices. They get to see what we do on game day. They don't see about breaking down those boxes and opening up that all that merchandise, those jerseys, those shirts, and figuring out where it's going to go. You know, how it's going to go, and how we have to separate it to send it to this place to make sure that each store or each location has enough, you know, to take care of 85,000 people in the stadium on any given day. You know, it's a lot that goes into it, making sure that you have scheduling, making sure you have enough people on, making sure you have your registered people, making sure that the breaks are taken care of, making sure that everybody is done doing what they need to be doing, making sure your aces are in their places to make sure that that fan experience is important. Because again, you know, it's about the people. And you know, I think that's kind of what drew me to what I do here at CPM, is because I'm a people person, and I've always been in the service. I've been in retail customer service for, since I was 19 years old, 18, 19 years old. Since I was working at McDonald's and now here and stuff. And so it's always been about helping people. But to help people, you have to prepare yourself. And you have to, you know, you have preparation plus opportunity equals success. And that's what I tell my team all the time. It's like, we have to prepare ourselves for winter and summer LIHEAP. We have to prepare ourselves for, excuse me, just like the football team has to prepare, the merchandising team has to prepare, the soda vendors have to prepare, the school has to prepare, you know, the police have to prepare for traffic. So everybody, there's always going to be preparation. For you students out there, yes, prepare to take your tests because you know, on Monday morning, because I used to see there on Monday morning after a game, I'd see a lot of you students come running in. I need my blue book. I need that. I need that little thing to take my test, and I need a pencil. And I'm just like, guys, get this stuff prior. Get this stuff when your parents are here. Getting, you know, spending money not just on the jersey, but pick up a couple of blue books as well.
So we have a game coming up in a couple of days from
Illinois
now, right?
State, yes.
Are you excited about that?
I'm very excited. I'm super excited. You know, last year, our first year in the SEC was a little bit rough, but I think we're going to turn it around. I think, you know, I believe in Brent Venables, and I believe that, you know, now that we have Ben Arbuckle, who is doing really well as our offensive coordinator, and John Mateer, who's our quarterback, and I've been hearing a lot, and actually on the radio over here, I was listening to the ref, and I was hearing a lot of good things about Michael Hawkins, who was our backup quarterback last year, and you know that he's thriving in that position, which I think is good. And you know, our defense was top notch last year, and there's no point about it. But we just couldn't, for some reason, get to the end zone. You know, for some reason, it's like we were the Dallas Cowboys or the Texas Longhorns of college football. And for you Cowboy fans out there, sorry, but you know it's true. We just couldn't get to the end zone, and we just couldn't put up points. And I think this year with John Mateer and this new offensive line, you know, I think we're going to do really well. I believe everyone's saying that we might be 9-3. I'm predicting that, you know, we may lose 2 games this year. It's not going to be the Red River game, though. I think the Sooners are going to come out with a chip on their shoulder in the Red River game, and they're going to bring the golden hat back to Norman. So.
Hope so.
Yeah.
You got anybody that you're worried about in terms of opponents?
You know, I'm worried about Alabama.
Oh, yeah.
Because we have to go to Tuscaloosa, and I have family members who are Alabama fans. My mother-in-law, God rest her soul, she was a diehard Alabama fan, but she loved Oklahoma. She did. She loved Oklahoma because I was an Oklahoma fan, and she also loved it even more when Jalen Hurts came to play for Oklahoma. So she loved it even more. But the rest of my in-laws, they're diehard Alabama fans, and so I think it's going to be a little rough because we did kind of embarrass them here in Norman last year, and we didn't see that happening. But I think Tuscaloosa is going to be a little rough one, and not many people can go into Tuscaloosa and pull out a victory, and so I'm a little worried about them. Missouri, I'm not too worried about because they can go if good or bad, and I think Tennessee, I think we could have beaten Tennessee last year had our offense played well, and so you know the game was pretty close. So I'm really worried. Michigan, we'll see. I'm a little worried about. I think Michigan is going to be our litmus test for our non-conference opponents, but I think it's going to be. I think we're going to come out really well on that one.
So, are you like a tailgater?
I used to tailgate. We were just talking about that recently. We generally tailgate on the south side of. Right behind where Heisman Row is, where the Selman Brothers statue is. We're right in that area over there. But we didn't do it last year. My niece actually graduated from OU, and so we were all just like, well, maybe we'll just not this year. And which was a little sad because we wanted to see all these SEC teams come. And then this year we're all just pretty busy with a lot of things. My wife started a new position. I'm in preparation for a karaoke contest, which we'll talk about later. And we're just busy, and so we're all just busy, and so we're just we're just not going to do it this year. At some point we may get back out there, but right now we're just yeah.
So I don't want to be disrespectful to anybody, but we do happen to have a fellow facilitator on our team who happens to root for the Orange guys at Oklahoma State University.
Yeah.
You got any message that you might like to send out to him?
I'll say, I think they play tonight, so I think they should win that game pretty handily. I'm not sure who they're playing. I think it's
some
University of Southern somewhere. Nobody's heard of. I'm sure they're probably a good team. I think they're an FCS team, and again, that's what most teams will do. So I think they'll win this one. I believe they play Oregon next week. I would say, to our my fellow facilitator who is an Oklahoma State fan, I know you guys miss Bedlam, and I'm sorry, but maybe we'll fit you guys in sometime. But you guys are so desperate to play OU that you scheduled the wrong one. So I'm sorry, but you'll be fine. We'll see you in a couple of years, though. We'll see you in basketball season. So.
And now we can talk about somebody that we don't have to worry about showing respect. Tell us how you feel about Texas.
Oh, horns down all day, every day. I lived in Texas. I lived in Louisville, Texas, and so I would go into stores and I would see the Cowboys stuff on one side and I see that burnt orange on another side, and it was just bad. And I think Texas fans are just, they're delusional. I have 5 Texas friends, 5 Texas fans who are friends. Like the old T-Mobile commercial, you have Charles Barkley with the Fave 5. I have room for 5 Texas fans, and I really only keep 4. So, and it came to a while, when I lived in Texas, I was like, all right, one of y'all going to have to drop off. I'm going to have to drop one of you off. But, that didn't really happen, so it was okay. Mm-hmm. But I will, so every time I went to the store, and I saw something, it was my right as a Sooners fan, I would turn something burnt orange upside down. I would turn the Hornets upside down all the time. And there was one store, Tom Thumb, down in Louisville, Texas. I miss those guys because they had a great wine section. But they knew that it was me. And they just were like, it's Jason. They were like, it's just Jason. And so they would just go behind when we were done and just turn it right back. There was one time they just didn't even do it. I came in there like a couple days later, and it was still upside down. It's still upside down. And so I teach my other niece, Emily, she does that now. Like she'll go, they're in Texas, she'll go in and she'll turn some things upside down. She'll send me a picture and I go, I've trained you well. But, Texas, I enjoyed my time in Texas. I enjoyed some of the people that I knew in Texas because I have family down there. I just didn't enjoy some of the fans, Cowboys or others, because again, they just, they were just obnoxious. But on the days of the Red River, I would show, because I called my car Sooner Force One, so I would have the flags flying. I would walk into the building with all my OU gear, and they would go, "Oh, OU's going to lose this time," and then come Monday morning after we've hung 65 or half 100, as Coach Switzer would say, half 100 on them, and they would go, I'll go, how'd that weekend? How'd your weekend go? They're like, oh, how was yours? I was like, I had Bevo burgers for lunch on Saturday, or for dinner. How'd you guys do? But yeah, I mean, but that's part of the nature of the rivalry. I mean, and I think Monday morning, after we cracked on each other, we just got back to business and we did what we need to do. And then another year goes by and comes around again. I think that's, college football and all sports, there's always going to be that rivalry, the Cowboys and the Giants. Yankees and the Red Sox, Ohio State and Michigan, OU and the Red River. OU. It's always a great thing. And I've actually got to go to a couple of Red River games, and just seeing the pageantry of it, it's a lot of fun, especially when OU wins. When we lose, it's not pretty because the fans just the Texas fans just aren't fun. But at the end of the day, it really is just rivalry. It's a game. It's entertainment, and if and I get it. You can't live your life. And this may offend some football fans, but you can't live your life by sports and live and die by the way that the sports team is going to go, because you're not out there, you're not responsible for paying them. I mean, technically, if you're buying a jersey, you are, and I get it, but you're not out there making those shots. They have, and again, that's where it comes down to preparation. The teams have to prepare. They have to get out there. They have to go to practice. And yes, Al Iverson would say, we talk about practice? Yes, practice. You have to go out there and you have to practice. You have to prepare for it. You have to be mentally and physically prepared to get out there and to go and fight or beat your opponent, the way that you want. And shout out to the Thunder for being very prepared this year for winning, the national championship and bringing home a championship to Oklahoma City. Really appreciate it. Yeah, I'm still a little tan from being out there at that celebration a few months back, but it was great, and it was just great, and I had a friend of mine ask me, what was it like? And, you've been to the Yankees celebration, the Rangers celebration when they won in the NHL, and the Giants celebration. I said, all those things were great. It was amazing watching that and watching, the players come down Heroes Canyon in New York City. But, it's still split, because for the Yankee fans who were cheering, there were Mets fans who were like, well, we hate you. For the Rangers fans who cheered, the Islanders fans hated it. For Giants fans, Jets fans are always in in misery, because the Jets are always out of the playoff contention the second week of the year. Sorry, you guys know it's true. But, we're happy. For here in Oklahoma City, it was a little bit different, because everybody in the state, Oklahoma fans, Oklahoma State fans, UCO fans, Tulsa fans, everyone got behind the Thunder, and it was just a different type of atmosphere. It was so much fun. It was so much love. I mean, even being out there in 110-degree weather, because it felt like it. It was just fun. There was music going. We were all laughing. A bunch of us were just hanging out, meeting new people and just talking about whatever your political or whatever it was. This is what brought us all together. It was just a great thing, and just meeting people and just having fun and just sharing in that. With all the crazy thing that's going on in the world, here in Oklahoma, this was our moment of just like, what, let's all just be cool and just have fun and just enjoy this and not worry about anything else. And it was such a great feeling. It really was.
Amazing. It was really amazing. Yeah. So I want to say that fans like you make football fun for the rest of us. So thank you for that.
I try. I do my best.
So, we do a parenting class, and our program is all about parenting and positive fathers and positive fatherhood. Yeah. And you and I recently attended a Greenwood Film Festival, the fifth annual Greenwood Film Festival.
Yeah. Had a lot of fun, too.
Yes, and saw some very interesting films.
Yeah.
And one of those films sparked a conversation between us about superheroes. And would you sort of tell us the genesis of that conversation?
Well, first and foremost, let me also say, not only do I love college football, I am a geek. I am a geek, and everyone, and if my team members know this, they are watching this, they will say, oh yes, his geek flag is super big, and like, if my entire area is Batman based, and we call it the Bat Cave. So we were having a conversation, and they were having a panel, and one of the panelists, his name is Legend. Real name is Nigel, but he spells it backwards, Legend, because he says that God turned his life around, which was very interesting. So he was on our podcast up at the Greenwood Film Festival, and we were having a conversation, and he was talking about, he said, we see a lot of movies and we see a lot of things. He's like, especially superhero movies. He's like, but did you ever really think about most of the superheroes that we look up to or that we admire don't have parents or don't have fathers in their life? And I sat there going, as a geek, I said, well, wait a minute, hold on. That can't be, no. And I said, well, Batman, obviously, because he lost his parents. I said, Spider-Man, well, he's got Aunt May, but he lost Uncle Ben.
Right.
I said,
And he lost his parents before
and
that.
he lost his parents before, which led to a very interesting comic book storyline years ago, but we just don't talk about that one. And for all you Marvel fans, you probably know, and you could probably elaborate on it a little bit more than I can. And I said, well, the X-Men, and I go, well, no, wait a minute, no. I said, Professor Xavier is their father figure. I said, but to be fair, in the comic books, if you're familiar with the comic books, they kill him off every time I turn around, and even they killed him off in the movie at one point in time. And I said, all right, well, that's Marvel. What about DC? And I said, well, Batman, no, lost his parents. I was like, Wonder Woman, well, she does have her mother, but she grew up on Themyscira, which is a whole island full of women. And I go, okay. I was like, well, Superman. I said, well, he had, I said, so technically, I said, yes, he had Ma and Pa Kent. Depending on the iteration that you're watching, I said, he has his father and he has his mother, but he really lost. He's adopted. He lost his planet, not just his parents. He lost his whole planet. His real but eternal mother and father, he lost. I was like, and then depending on the iteration that you're watching of Superman, they usually kill off Jonathan Kent. In Smallville, season 5, they killed off Jonathan Kent. In Man of Steel, he was killed off. And so I said, wow, he's right. I was like, Daredevil? No. I said, Green Lantern? No. I said, I was running through all the heroes, and I said, wow, some of them, or the parents just aren't acknowledged in the storyline at all. And I just thought that was just very interesting, that a lot of them, and you could sit there and try to analyze and say, the reason some of them have issues is because they have a parental figure in there. Right. And even, Superman, when he lost his father, and depending on which one you're watching, it hurt him, but it also pushed him to be better, because in Man of Steel, you hear him say, he had all this power and all this power, but I couldn't save my father from a simple thing as a tornado, which I could probably have redirected or done some sort of thing. And so at the end of Man of Steel, you see him put into a situation where he felt powerless again, where Zod was getting ready to harm innocent people. And he had no choice but to, and I'm not going to spoil it for everybody, but he had to act instead of trying to relive that trauma all over again. And so it was very interesting to see, looking back at that, how the lack of fathers or a parent has affected some of these heroes, and probably even some of their villains or their nemesis. Take a look at Lex Luthor. Lex, constantly lived in the shadow of his father, if you're looking from the Smallville aspect of it, until finally he stepped out of his shadow. But his father was always, just berating him and telling him he wasn't good enough or trying to get him to be better. And finally Lex just had it and just said, I'm just going to do this on my own, and did it my own way. So, sometimes having a parent in there doesn't all necessarily mean that you're going to turn out well, because the sins of the father are cast upon the son, and visited upon the son. And so sometimes you run into those situations where, what type of parent are you going to be? And I think that's one of the things that we talk about in our communication, looking at how Lionel used to communicate. And again, I'm basing this all for Smallville, so if you haven't seen Smallville, by all means, go watch it. If you haven't, how we communicate to our children, I think it's one of the things that's important about our class is communicating with our children and our loved ones as well, and how that affects them. You can see, and I'm going to build on Smallville again, Jonathan and Clark's relationship was very nurturing and very, and Jonathan would do anything in his power to protect Clark from any type of harm. Whereas Lionel was so, it's about the money, it's about this, it's about that, and all the other underlying things that he did, which affected Lex, and Lex kind of was drawn to Clark's relationship and admired and even envious of Clark's relationship with his father, because that's what he wanted. But he was, because of his last name Luthor, but the Kents didn't really trust him, and he couldn't get any type of relationship with his father, because his father was just like, you need to be just like me, or you're never going to be as better as me. So no wonder Lex went down the path that he did. Yeah.
So this doesn't just end though with the superheroes. It's also in Star Wars. There's also a missing father, or a father revealed.
So with Star Wars is and for those of you by now, you should already know, if you have not seen Empire Strikes Back, you should.
Spoiler alert.
Spoiler alert. Vader is Luke's father. Sorry, if you guys don't know. Sorry, I mean the movie's over 30 years old. You should know this already. Yeah. But you can even take that all the way back to, if you want to go back to the prequels. Look how Anakin grew up. He only had his mother. She did the best that she could.
Right.
But and then the Jedi basically came and sort of potentially took him away. And he didn't have a father. He didn't have a father relationship. Obi-Wan was as close to a father as he could.
Right.
And I will say this, and this is probably tick off a couple of Jedis out there. The Jedi were wrong. The Jedi handled Anakin wrong. They handled a lot of things wrong. And I think had they taken the time to not focus on the prophecy of the balance of the Force and see that this is just a young kid and he misses his mother and he's taken away from his mother. He never had a father, and Obi-Wan is the only father that he was. And Obi-Wan did the best that he could, but Obi-Wan was also akin to the Jedi Masters and also what the prophecy was about. And so it led Anakin down a dark path. And so when Chancellor Palpatine, yes, he's Darth Sidious. When Chancellor Palpatine said, "Hey, I'm going to talk to you, and I'm going to mentor you, and I'm going to treat you like a son," and that's all he wanted.
That filled the void, yeah.
Right, he filled the void that the Jedi were not willing to do. Mm-hmm. And yes, Yoda was wrong, and so that's what led him, and so that's why he was so easily seduced by the dark side of the Force. Right. And then, Luke was left on his own, left on Tatooine. Leia was. I'm ruining a lot of the Star Wars for y'all, so if you haven't watched the prequel, stop now. If you haven't watched the series, stop now and go watch it, then come back and watch this podcast. But Leia grew up, and she had both parents. She had a father, she had a mother, she had a whole bunch of people, but she lived up in royalty. Whereas Luke was in squalor. He had his Uncle Owen, he had Aunt Beru with her purple and blue milk, and but he was left to his own design. And to a certain extent, even though Obi-Wan was there, there was still that level of you're kind of left to your own design, and I'll watch over you, but and even then Uncle Owen didn't want Obi-Wan to be involved with his life or anymore. And so there was that break there where there was two people that were probably could have cared and nurtured him. One didn't want the other one around because of fear of who his father was, and didn't want to tell them the truth about it. And then when Luke finally found out about it, in Empire, he rebelled against it. He said, "No, this can't be true." And so he struggled with it for a long time. And mind you, by the time we get to Return of the Jedi, he kind of dealt with his issues with that, and to a certain extent kind of embraced a little bit of that, as you see him in all black and with the glove. And it was foreshadowing because Anakin had lost his hand, Luke lost his hand, and there it was. Yeah.
So,
we can talk about this all day, man. You would understand.
And we won't. We'll wrap up here in just a minute. But what do you think it says that all of these created characters, the motivation was then the absence of a father or the absence of a parent?
Ooh. I would say... I'm going to use Batman as an example because, and you can use Luke as an example as well. I think one of Luke's motivations was he never knew who his father was. And so, when we meet Luke Skywalker, he's this little farm boy on Tatooine. He's potentially has a great pilot, great skill. He knows there's a little bit something that he's probably meant for greater things, and even to a certain extent, he almost joined, the Imperial Academy, become a stormtrooper. But had fate not intervened, he probably would have wound up, either an Imperial stormtrooper or probably would have been dead, like Aunt Beru and Uncle Owen were, had he been there. And I think it motivated him to. I don't want to say he was lazy. I would say it motivated him to try to find his way in the galaxy. And his purpose. What his purpose was. But not having a father figure there, but, and then Obi-Wan came along and became that father figure at that critical time to kind of guide him to where his purpose needed to be. And so had he had maybe and I think Owen did the best that he could, and Aunt Beru did the best that he could, but they also lived to a certain extent in fear of anyone ever finding out about Luke
The
and
true lineage.
the true lineage.
Right.
And same thing that you could say about Jonathan Kent with finding out about what Clark Kent's, actual powers, and that he's not really from Earth, he's actually from Krypton. So I think with all of those characters, Clark, Luke, I think not having a father in their earlier years motivated them and it also gave them a little bit of confusion, because who am I without my dad, or who am I without these parental figures? We see in the original Superman movie, Superman, he becomes Superman, but he doesn't have his mother, he doesn't have any of his parents at all. Mm-hmm. Batman has to go through life with the image of his parents dying in front of him, and so that motivates him. And people can philosophize about that, but say Bruce Wayne died in that alley that night. He never had a childhood ever again. That night was the beginning of Batman. And it's Bruce Wayne and Batman. Said no, Batman is who he became at 10 years old. Bruce Wayne has always been the mask. Batman is who he is. Same thing with Luke Skywalker. He eventually found somebody that came to him in his time of confusion and helped him move along his path. You can say Alfred was there for Batman as well. He was that father figure, but not having your maternal parents or someone who loves you as good as best as you can and helping you through those critical years, you're missing something.
Right.
And it does. It takes away from you. I never knew my father growing up. I didn't. And it but I had my mother, I had my grandmother, I had aunts, I had my friends, because I ran track. We had track parents who were always there, who were always giving us some sort of feedback, and not just make sure you're working your arms in the curve, make sure you're pacing yourself, but also, hey, don't you got a test on Monday? Yeah, you should be, when you're not practicing, make sure you're going to the bleachers, go read a couple of chapters and stuff like that, And so that helps, I think one of the things that we talked about at the
Film festival?
The film festival, yes, sorry, was someone made a comment about, men should be helping, these young men and these young women grow up and stuff, as the community. Mm-hmm. And I agree with that. 99% of that I agree with, because that 1% of is the community can't be expected to raise a child that the parents aren't raising themselves. Mm-hmm. And I think that's where, if the community is being devastated from outside forces, if the community is being devastated by the children that we're being asked to raise because they're not getting that foundation at home, then what is the community supposed to do? The community can only do so much, because at a certain point in time, if that child's not going to listen, hey, pick up your pants, hey, go to school, and they say, old man, old lady, I'm not. The community is going to turn its back on that child, because that foundation is not being given to that child at home. Bernie Mac said it best. He said, "What are you, a mother at 20 and a grandmother at 30?" He said, "There's no old mama. There's no big mamas anymore. No grandmothers. There's none of those people that are teaching. We're not teaching our kids, to the foundation at home." I was told when I go out in public, I represent my mother, and it took me a long time, not until I actually worked at FL Schwartz, that I understand the true meaning of that. And it was how I handle myself, how I go out in public, how I talk to people, whether it be the janitor, one of the people that works with me, or the CEO. I treat them everybody, talk to them all equal. But if I'm not learning that level of respect at home, why am I going to listen to somebody that's not my mother or not my grandmother? And I think that's where we need to be teaching that level of foundation. That foundation has to be there at home. So yeah.
Well, so I'd just like to say thank you, Legend. I hope you see this for suggesting this topic to us.
Big up, Legend.
We had a lot of conversation about this on the way home.
On the drive home, yeah.
But I think it's interesting that whether consciously or unconsciously, the artists who created these superheroes and these characters understand the importance of a parental figure in a life, or the absence thereof, and how that can impact a person. And when we think about it, Batman seeing his parents being slain in front of him, that's an adverse childhood experience, So
it's interesting though, because while we were after we got home and I started thinking about this a little bit more. But if you think about it now, in the comic book world, you see Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, they all had sidekicks and stuff. And, for you comic book geeks out there, they became known as the Teen Titans. But you see how, Batman is traditionally known as a loner, but how many Robins has he had over the years? Superman, in the show Superman and Lois, Superman has now kids, and Wonder Woman is training the next generation of women coming out of Themyscira, and she's an ambassador, and there's the Green Lantern Corps, and so at a certain point, all of these heroes who are known to be as loners, they eventually find that level of family, and it doesn't always have to be that bloodline of family, but because Dick Grayson and Jason Todd, and then Tim Drake became Robins and became moved on into her own path and stuff, and Wonder Woman had Wonder Girl, and Superman has Superboy and Supergirl, and so they all eventually wind up being parental figures for the next level of heroes coming up. And so I think that's also that's probably also another interesting aspect of it, of when we don't have fathers or parents in our lives, we sometimes go in the opposite direction. Yes, there's sometimes a negative effect of it, but there may be a positive effect of it as well. We tend to create what we've yearned that we missed in our lives. Batman has a whole family of people that help him, from the Robins to Catwoman to all these other people. Superman has a whole super family. Wonder Woman has her whole family. Green Lantern has the Green Lantern Corps, and Captain America has Bucky and the Avengers, and even Tony Stark, who lost his parents, he has the Avengers. They have their family, and I think that's an interesting thought that came out of the Avengers Endgame movie. Great movie, by the way. Go see it. There's a scene after one of the characters dies. You guys have seen, it's almost 10 years, you guys should have seen this movie. When Black Widow passes on, the rest of the Avengers are sitting there at the lake, and they go, somebody asks, well, did she have a family? And they say, no, it was us. And Thor goes, what did he say? He said, no, we were her family. And it's like, wow. And I thought about that as we go back to an early Avengers. I was like, she did say that. She said all she had was the Avengers, and it was her family.
That's so fascinating. That's such a great observation.
Yeah.
First of all, that the superheroes themselves, out of their own brokenness, become mentors to the next generation. And secondly, what you just said about building families.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's sort of what you've done.
Yeah, I have. My mom and my sister are still in New York City, but I have my Oklahoma family, and we've always called them the Oklahoma family, and we all get together. We don't tailgate as much as we used to, but we all get together. And when my niece Carter was graduating, I was my sister is a little older now, but my wife and I were there for her, because she was here in Norman. Her family is up in Oklahoma City. But if there was any problem, she knew, oh, Uncle Jason's coming. I'm coming. I'm in the Batmobile. I'm in Sooner Force One. I'm coming to get you or do whatever you need to do. It never got to that, but she knew that and my other niece Amy, her mom is down in Ardmore, but we're right here. And so, if she needs us, or even if we just need to show up and be supportive for a function that they're having, that she's having, or something, like, we're there, and we're always going to be there, and that's part of it. And so I think, I didn't have a big family. It was me, and then my sister and I are 21 years old, 21 years apart. And so, I was an only child for a while. And so, but again, didn't go to a big school, didn't have a big family, but we created that, and that's, you create the family that you want. You love your paternal family, but sometimes you create your own little family that comes with it. And, we've been together. My wife and I have been together, we've been married 11 years, we've been together 17, and, everybody, I think when I first told everybody that I was coming out, because we have an Easter get-together, when I was bringing her out, they were like, you're bringing somebody? Jason's bringing somebody? It was just like, I thought, I expected when we got out the airport, there was going to be TV cameras and news cameras and everything, and none of that happened. But it did seem like it, though. But, she took it all in stride, because she comes from a big family, so she was used to it. And she just laughed and just enjoyed everything, and they just welcomed her with open arms, and it was just great. And at the end of the day, they were all just like, yeah, you don't mess this up, Jason. And I haven't. Knock on wood, I have not messed it up. So,
Jason, you're a fascinating and interesting individual, a man of many talents. I love the way that you have just a mind that you can capture details and recall them and talk about them. I see that in your sports.
It's a Batman thing.
Yeah, it must be. It must be. But one of your hidden talents is that you like to do karaoke and sing. And recently you got yourself into a contest.
I love karaoke.
And where are we at with that?
I love karaoke. Let me tell you, my journey in karaoke has been very interesting, and I started. I tell people sometimes, it's like, I love music. I've always loved music. My friends and I, we used to be in the locker room. We used to harmonize and stuff in high school and stuff. And, I grew up around music between my mother and my grandmother, just between Ella Fitzgerald to Marvin Gaye, all of that. And, I just love music. And I was always dancing. I was always singing. I didn't think I had a great voice. To this day, I still don't think I have a great voice. But I used to do karaoke all the time in New York City, and I used to go to contests, and I used to get into what we used to call karaoke battles all the time, because there are people. If you've ever seen the movie Duets, where Huey Lewis walks in and he's this guy's doing. There's always that guy who's like, and everyone's cheering for him, and Huey Lewis walks up there and he just knocks it out the park. So I don't want to say I was the Huey Lewis character. But when you find your song and when you find, your rhythm, I would just walk in. I just wanted to have fun. But there would always be some guy that always thinks that I can outdo you. And I'm like, I just want to do my song. I just want to do my Montel Jordan and just go home and just have, that's all I want to do. And it would lead to a karaoke battle in the middle of the bar. And so I'm undefeated. I've never been defeated in a karaoke battle. Wow. Or as we used to laugh and call it karaoke Thunderdome. I've never been defeated in a karaoke battle. But we also, I used to do contests and things along those lines. And so after, and it was fun, when you're young and you're in your late 20s and your early 30s and New York City is the bar scene, you go from karaoke spot to karaoke spot and you're having fun. But, I met my wife, settled down. We moved to Texas, then moved to Oklahoma. And so I just kind of got out of the karaoke battle and karaoke competition scene. And so one day, and so now I'm like, we're just doing karaoke in the living room. We have our microphones, we have a karaoke machine that we do, and that was it. I was happy. But then my friend, she says, there's this karaoke contest at this bar near where we live. And I said, I'm not doing that. I said, I'm just not doing that. I don't want to do that. And so as I was looking, because you can find everything on Facebook, all sorts of groups on Facebook, and I know Facebook did a whole commercial about that, and you can. There is a Oklahoma karaoke group page or Oklahoma Karaoke Nation page. Shout out to those administrators. I just gave you a shout out now. And I was going through and I saw something about a guy who won the national or international or the world karaoke contest that's held in Vegas every year, and I go, okay. And he's from Moore, Oklahoma. His name is Duncan Wallace. And I was going, wait a minute. So I dug a little deeper into this, and I found out that, and he's a great voice, but he's now the chapter president for what they call the United States Karaoke Association, or USKA. And he won, and Oklahoma didn't have a chapter. Never had a chapter. So he actually won because he had to go through, unfortunately, Texas. He had to go through Texas. And he won, beat everybody in Texas. Go Oklahoma. We can add that up there to a notch against Texas. And so he beat Texas, beat all the Texas, went there, won the Worlds. And when you win the championship, you can come back and, defend your title. And he said, no, I want to do it. I want to start my own chapter. And so we held one, and I went to the venue finals, and I am now going to be participating on September 27th and 28th at Lake Thunderbird Event Center. That's where I'm going to be competing against myself and 60 other contestants.
Lake Thunderbird Event Center. Now, where's that?
Lake Thunderbird Event Center is connected to Lake Thunderbird Casino off of Highway 9, not too, literally diagonally across from Lake Thunderbird Lake. So that's where we're going to be, and it's free for everybody who wants to come. And there are tables that are available if you want VIP tables or stuff like that. I've actually been out there because they do a karaoke out there, and so they have a nice big stage. But the stage that, from what I'm hearing, is going to be spectacular. I can't give any secrets away, but I hear it's going to be amazing. But I've been out there and I've been practicing and rehearsing and have been since June. And so we have to, from what I understand, I have to have 5 songs ready. I'm down to 4. And I'm having trouble for the past couple of weeks figuring out what my 5th song is going to be. But that's okay. I'll figure it out.
So what do you figure your chances are? You going to win this one?
For me, I was just at one of the venue finals the other night, and some good competition. There's a lot of good people out there that are really. Oklahoma has a very untapped region for a lot of singers, a lot of great singers. The team that I'm on, everybody's doing great. We have people doing variety from opera to R&B to pop to all sorts of things, and it's amazing. It's just seeing what everybody does, and it's going to be fun. I'm just excited to be doing it.
Well, Jason, you can count on me being there because I like going out to Thunderbird anyway. They have great hamburgers out there.
Yes, they do. They do. I do know that.
This is the Forge Your Trail podcast. I'm Frank Rodriguez, your host. Today, our guest has been Mr. Jason Bligen. And Jason, it's been a real pleasure visiting with you.
It's been fun.
And I look forward to seeing you win that karaoke contest,
I hope so. From your lips to God's ears, and the karaoke God's ears, yeah.
Well,
and it's on 27th and 28th. It's a bye week for all you Sooners fans, so don't worry. You don't have to worry. We scheduled that specifically. From what I heard, the promoters scheduled it specifically so that it was a bye week for OU. So you don't have to worry about that. OSU fans, sorry, I don't know what to tell you.
Well, thank you, Jason, and thank you all for watching the Forge Your Trail podcast.
Thank you. Have a good one, guys.